Elite have gone collectively mad, haven't they? Just look at this headline. Or actually, have they gone collectively mad? Is there some sort of method in this? Is it madness or is it something else? I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So, a nurse called Jennifer Melly, a senior nurse, by the way, someone with experience, someone who's put in her time, the sort of nurse, in fact, that we wish we would have if there was an emergency. Nurse Melly was dealing with a male patient and she had to do something with a catheter. Now, I suppose you know what a catheter is. And also, I suppose you might be aware that a catheter inserted into the relevant part of a female body would be a somewhat different procedure, and for all I know, a different type of device from a similar appliance being inserted into the relevant part of a male body. At that point, so to speak, the difference is probably quite important. And so her entire training, attitude and experience would be directed towards the treatment of a male patient because that's what she had in front of her. The Telegraph has it, an NHS nurse was punished after accidentally addressing a transgender paedophile. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to blur that word out, as Mr. But it wasn't accidental. She had to treat him as a man. Miss Melly said she was discussing a catheter for a male person which needed to be removed, adding, this was a real-life medical scenario that required accurate terminology to avoid any doubt between medical professionals. I believe she was talking on the phone to a doctor. Overhearing Miss Melly, the patient, who was born a man but identified as a woman, took issue with the male pronoun and title. The nurse replied that she was sorry, I cannot refer to you as her or she, as it's against my faith and Christian values, but I can call you by your name. No, it's not against her faith and Christian values, it's against her training. It's against her wish to deliver the sort of treatment that would be appropriate for that sex of person. However, if her Christian values come into it, then that's a protected characteristic, I believe. Just to remind you of what Christian values among nurses used to look like, I'm going to show you. Here we are. This photograph was taken in 1957 in Leeds General Infirmary, which is where I was born, I believe. And it showed these nurses attending morning prayers. It says praying for their patients, but they might just as well have been praying for their own efficiency and good humour in the face sometimes of some rather awkward situations. Well, that was when nurses could call on their Christian heritage, which is actually the essence of nursing. Nursing, of course, modern nursing was based on the idea of the nursing convent, wasn't it? Right, well, I just thought you might be interested in that. And here is Nurse Melly, who looks to me like a nice person. And she has Christian values and is being punished for them. Anyway, this particular male patient, hearing himself being called Mr. in this phone conversation that the nurse was having with a doctor, then flew into a violent fury. Not the doctor, of course, the patient. I might point out at this juncture that this man in a frock was also a criminal. He is a convicted paedophile who was being brought into hospital for treatment from his cell in a high security prison. Altogether, I suppose we could say that he was no gentleman, nor no lady either. He started screaming, he insulted her race, and he lunged at her and was restrained probably by the policeman who must have been accompanying him. Now, I just want at this point to show you this document here, dealing with racism from patients, and it's the MDU. I don't know what the MDU is, but it's obviously some sort of medical support organisation, and it says racism is not something healthcare staff should tolerate. Ill health should not be an excuse for racist behaviour. The number of times I've heard of demented old people who've made racial comments and then have been denied hospital treatment, which I think is appalling, that keeps coming up again and again. So when demented old people racially abuse nurses because they're, I don't know what, back in the 1930s or 40s or wherever their brains have gone back to, they're bad. But when a transgender man, a woman, thing goes after a nurse, no, the nurse has to bite her tongue and accept the situation. You would think the hospital, if only out of sheer self-defence, would take her side, wouldn't you? I mean, how many experienced nurses do we have in our overcrowded hospitals? Instead, the hospital or the health trust or whatever accused her of misgendering, even though she, as I said, had tried to placate the man by saying her Christian beliefs prevented her from calling him she. So she was trying to explain to him that she had certain beliefs. Actually, I don't think that was quite the thing. The thing was that it was a man and she was treating a man. She couldn't refer to him as a woman without the possibility of accidents happening. Oh, and by the way, if accidents had happened, who would have been blamed for it? Her. Anyway, she tried to placate him and offered to call him by name, and it didn't help. The hospital brought out the big guns, and now she's at risk of losing her job. Meanwhile, so far as I've read, the patient gets a slap on the wrist. Why is this happening? I mean, what is wrong with everybody? Well, the obvious and first possibility, of course, is that the hospital is afraid of a legal backlash and possibly even a discrimination claim. But I don't think it can be all that because, after all, as I said, old people who are out of their minds, who call nurses nasty names, they get shoved to one side. They get ignored. And everyone says, yeah, well, that's quite right. You can't make racist comments to nurses. So the hospitals are quite prepared to do that sort of awful stuff. But when a transgender man comes and does that sort of thing, then they're completely different. You may remember there's a nurse called Sandy Peggy. Again, she's a senior nurse. She has 30 years experience. And she was working, I don't know if she still is, but she was working in the Victoria Hospital in Kirkcaldy in Fife, which is in Scotland, for those of you who don't know where Fife is. And she ran into some transgender trouble just before Christmas in 2023. You'd think the hospital would have regarded her as a precious resource, wouldn't you, if you had any sense? You would. And if they'd have been in their right minds, they would too. But when Dr. Upton, a man who has taken the name Beth, and started using the female changing room, and she objected, guess whose side NHS 5 came down on? And in both cases, I mean, from outside looking in both cases, for both these nurses, the hospital authorities seem genuinely to believe, to be absolutely convinced that the nurses are in the wrong. I mean, the Scottish case, they're spending thousands on a court case to do with this. It's because they want to show how strongly they believe in it. So a man can watch a woman changing her underwear after a menstrual accident, as happened with Nurse Peggy, or a convicted and obviously violent criminal can attack a woman in a hospital treatment room, and it's the women who are in the wrong. You know, even racial insults fade into obscurity next to transgender orthodoxy. Do you really think that they actually believe in this transgender nonsense? I don't think so. I've been thinking about it all day. The only possible explanation I can come up with is as follows. Nurses are pretty low down in the National Health Service pecking order, aren't they? So we have here a conflict between what you might call the practical working classes, the people with a realistic view of the world, and the educated elite, the people who want to make the world as they want it to be, not how it is. The educated elite want the working classes to toe the line because the working classes have to be controlled. There's nothing the educated elite fear more than the lower classes making common cause. So at every level we're seeing this, whether it's in the streets of Southport or along a hospital corridor. The lower classes have to be forced to say what ain't so, just to make sure they know who's boss. And I think that's what it boils down to. Just know your place. Well, what do you think? Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.